Everyone says the CEO is infertile and sickly, but after one night, he gets her pregnant with triplets. Hi, my beautiful story family. Welcome to Mr. Peter Stories. Today, I won't ask for likes, comments, or subscriptions because I've realized something important. Maybe I've been too focused on those things and lost sight of what truly matters. You. You're not just viewers to me. You're my family, my inspiration, and the reason I keep creating. I'm sorry if I've ever let you down with irrelevant requests or distracted from the stories we love to share. But no matter what, I want you to know how much you mean to me. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for allowing me to be a part of your life. Let's set all that aside and dive into another story together. This one's for you. The setting sun cast long shadows across Xavier Sterling's penthouse office, painting Manhattan's skyline in hues of amber and gold. At 35, he stood like a statue against the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection a stark reminder of his solitude. The city sprawled beneath him, a concrete empire he'd built from nothing, every skyscraper bearing witness to his rise from a struggling entrepreneur to New York's most formidable CEO. His fingers traced the cool glass, the same way they had traced the divorce papers 3 months ago. The Sterling Industries building, all 92 floors of architectural brilliance, suddenly felt like a hollow monument to his personal failures. The headlines from this morning's New York Times business section lay scattered across his mahogany desk. Sterling Empire crumbles. CEO's personal life raises questions of succession. Xavier's jaw clenched, the muscle twitching beneath his perfectly trimmed beard. 5 years of marriage to Adriana Blackwood had ended not with a whimper, but with an explosion that rocked New York's high society to its core. Her words, delivered at the charity gala 3 weeks ago, still burned in his ears. "A man who can't father children has no business leading a legacy company," she had declared, champagne glass tilted dangerously in her manicured hands. "How can someone who shoots blanks ensure his company's future?" The memory made his hands curl into fists. The whispers had started that very night, hushed conversations behind sterling silver fans and crystal glasses. By morning, every social media platform was buzzing with speculation about his virility, his sexuality, his worth as a man. Boardroom meetings became exercises in maintaining dignity, while elderly board members exchanged knowing looks. Walking to his desk, Xavier picked up a silver frame, the only personal item in his minimalist office. It held a photograph of his parents, both lost in a car accident when he was 12. His father's words echoed from the past. "A sterling man builds his own destiny, son. Never let them see you break." But breaking was exactly what he felt like doing. The fertility specialists he'd consulted in secret had all said the same thing. His condition wasn't impossible to overcome, just highly challenging. He'd kept those medical records sealed, protecting his privacy, but Adriana had somehow accessed them. Now his most personal struggle was fodder for Page 6 and business blogs. His intercom buzzed, startling him from his thoughts. "Mr. Sterling?" His assistant's voice was hesitant. "The board is requesting an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. They're concerned about investor confidence." "Schedule it for 9 a.m. sharp," he replied, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "And Violet? Cancel my dinner with the Thompson Group tonight. Have the contract sent to legal for review instead." The silence in his office pressed against him like a physical weight. Outside, the city lights began to twinkle awake, a constellation of artificial stars that usually filled him with pride. Tonight, they only reminded him of how alone he truly was. His phone vibrated, another text from his younger sister, Lysandra. "Big brother, you can't hide in that tower forever. Come to dinner, please." He ignored it, just as he'd ignored the last dozen messages from family and so-called friends. Their pity was worse than the criticism. At least the critics were honest in their disdain. Walking to the private bar in the corner of his office, Xavier poured himself 2 fingers of 30-year-old scotch. The amber liquid caught the dying sunlight, glowing like liquid gold. His father had always said, "A sterling man faces his troubles standing tall," but his father had never faced this kind of humiliation. The latest financial report sat unopened on his desk. Sterling Industries' stock had dropped 12% since Adriana's public revelation. 5 years of marriage had given her insider knowledge that made her accusations impossible to dismiss as mere bitter ex-wife rhetoric. She knew about the fertility treatments, the specialists, the quiet desperation with which he'd tried to give her the child she wanted. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was how each failed attempt had carved another piece from his soul, how each negative test had felt like a personal failure, despite the doctor's assurances that these things sometimes just happened. How he'd thrown himself into his work, building higher towers and bigger deals, trying to fill the void that grew with each passing month. His phone rang again, this time his lawyer. "They're preparing a vote of no confidence," Richard said without preamble. 3 board members have already pledged support for installing interim leadership while you sort out your personal issues. Xavier's laugh was bitter. "My personal issues? I've doubled our profit margins every year for the past decade. I've expanded into sustainable energy and affordable housing. I've made them all millionaires several times over." "You know how old money thinks, Xav. They're not just investing in the company, they're investing in the man. And right now they think I'm less of a man because I couldn't get my wife pregnant." The words tasted like acid. "Tell them I'll be ready for their questions tomorrow. All of them." After hanging up, Xavier loosened his tie and walked back to the windows. The city was fully alive now. Millions of lives intersecting in the streets below. Somewhere out there, Adriana was probably enjoying his public humiliation, maybe even planning her next move. The society columns were already linking her to a real estate mogul with 3 children from a previous marriage, proof of his virility prominently mentioned in every article. A cleaning cart rattled past his office door, reminding him of the late hour. Most of his employees had gone home to their families, their lives untouched by the drama playing out in the executive suite. He envied them their simplicity, their freedom from the weight of legacy and expectations. Opening his laptop, he began preparing for tomorrow's board meeting. He would face them with facts and figures, with projected earnings and expansion plans. He would remind them why Sterling Industries bore his name, why his vision had turned a modest real estate company into a global force for innovation. But as he worked through the night, a part of him wondered if it would be enough. In the world he operated in, perception often mattered more than reality. And right now, the perception was of a man whose personal failings might infect his professional judgment. As midnight approached, Xavier finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of his isolation. In this gleaming tower that bore his name, surrounded by the empire he'd built, he was utterly alone. The thought that he might never have a child to share this with, never pass on his legacy to a new generation, pressed against his chest like a physical pain. Little did he know, destiny had other plans. In less than 24 hours, a rain-soaked encounter in his building's lobby would change everything. But for now, Xavier Sterling, the man who seemed to have everything, stood alone in his tower, watching the city pulse with life below, unaware that his greatest challenge and his greatest blessing was just around the corner. The soft ping of his computer interrupted his thoughts. Another email from a board member expressing concerns about the company's direction. Squaring his shoulders, Xavier returned to his desk. He was a Sterling after all, and Sterling men didn't break. They rebuilt. Chapter 2. An Unexpected Meeting. Manhattan wept that autumn morning, its tears cascading down steel and glass in crystalline rivulets. The sky, a canvas of brooding greys, seemed to mirror Xavier Sterling's mood as his Bentley sliced through the rain-slicked streets. The board meeting had been exactly what he'd expected. 3 hours of thinly veiled accusations and concerns about company image wrapped in corporate pleasantries. Thunder growled overhead as his car pulled up to Sterling Tower. Declining his driver's offer of an umbrella, Xavier stepped out into the downpour. Sometimes, he mused, a man needed the sky's cleansing fury to wash away his demons. The rain soaked through his custom Tom Ford suit, each drop a cold reminder that he was still alive, still fighting. The lobby of Sterling Tower usually hummed with precise professional energy, a well-orchestrated symphony of corporate life. But fate, it seemed, had composed a different melody for this particular morning. As the glass doors whispered shut behind him, chaos erupted in the form of scattered papers dancing through the air, carried by the draft from the revolving doors. And there she was. Time seemed to slow, as Xavier watched her desperately chase the wayward sheets across the marble floor. Her chocolate skin glowed like burnished gold under the lobby's artistic lighting, raindrops glistening in her corkscrew curls like diamonds. She moved with a grace that defied her obvious distress, her tall, lithe frame bent in elegant pursuit of her scattered belongings. "I'm so sorry," she called out to no one in particular, her voice rich and melodious despite her embarrassment. "The wind just—" Their eyes met as she straightened, and Xavier felt something shift in the universe. Her eyes were extraordinary, amber with flecks of gold, like sunshine trapped in honey. They widened slightly in recognition, but held none of the usual fawning or calculation he'd grown accustomed to seeing in women's gazes. Without conscious thought, he found himself moving to help her, gathering the scattered papers. They were architectural drawings, he realized, brilliant, innovative designs that somehow merged futuristic vision with organic warmth. Each page spoke of talent that transcended the ordinary. "Thank you," she said, accepting the sheets he'd collected. "I must look like a complete disaster." Her laugh was genuine, self-deprecating, and it struck something deep within him that he'd thought long buried. "I believe disasters are often preludes to masterpieces," he replied, gesturing to her drawings. "These are extraordinary. The integration of sustainable materials with classical proportions. I've never seen anything quite like it." Surprise flickered across her features, followed by a smile that could have lit up the storm-darkened sky. "You know architecture. I know excellence when I see it." He extended his hand. "Xavier Sterling." "Azalea Rivers," she replied, her grip firm and professional despite her rain-soaked appearance. "And yes, I know who you are, Mr. Sterling. Your work in sustainable urban development is partially what inspired these designs." There was something refreshing about her directness, her unapologetic confidence. She stood before him, dripping rainwater onto his imported marble floors, yet carried herself with the dignity of a queen. Her simple charcoal dress, though now rain-dampened, spoke of elegant taste rather than designer labels. "You're here for the Anderson and Associates interview?" he asked, recognizing the portfolio format. The architectural firm leased 3 floors in his building. "Was here," she corrected with a rueful smile. "I'm afraid looking like a drowned cat probably didn't help my prospects." Something stirred in Xavier's chest, an impulse he couldn't quite name. Perhaps it was the way she held his gaze without artifice, or how her passion for her work shone through despite her circumstances. Or maybe it was simply that in her presence the weight of recent weeks seemed to lift ever so slightly. "Their loss," he said decisively. "Would you be interested in presenting these designs to someone who might actually have the vision to implement them?" Her eyebrows rose. "I'm sorry." Sterling Industries is always looking for fresh perspectives, Ms. Rivers, particularly from those who understand that architecture isn't just about buildings, it's about creating spaces that enhance lives. He withdrew a card from his wallet. My private office, 2 hours from now, unless you have another interview where you're planning to drip on their floors. That startled another laugh from her, genuine and warm. Are you always this direct, Mr. Sterling? Only when I recognize potential worth pursuing. He held her gaze, allowing himself to admire how the lobby lights caught the gold undertones in her skin. 2 hours gives you time to dry off and prepare, unless you'd prefer to maintain the drowned cat aesthetic. You're never going to let me live that down, are you? She accepted his card, her fingers brushing his momentarily. The contact sent an unexpected current through his arm. Not likely, Ms. Rivers. For the first time in weeks, Xavier felt his lips curve in a genuine smile. 2 hours. As he watched her walk away, her head held high despite her bedraggled appearance, Xavier felt something he hadn't experienced in far too long. Hope. Not the desperate hope of his marriage's final days, but something fresher, cleaner, like the air after a storm. His phone buzzed. Another message from his PR team about damage control strategies. For the first time since the scandal broke, Xavier found he didn't care about the whispers and speculation. Something more interesting had captured his attention. Taking the private elevator to his office, he called his assistant. Violet, clear my afternoon, and have facilities bring up some towels to the executive conference room. He paused, then added, and coffee. The good kind, not the boardroom blend. Sir? Violet's confusion was evident. The good kind is your personal reserve. I know. Xavier watched the city emerge from the storm through the elevator's glass walls. Sunlight was finally breaking through the clouds, painting the wet streets with gold. Sometimes, Violet, excellence deserves recognition. As the elevator continued its smooth ascent, Xavier found himself looking forward to the afternoon with an anticipation he hadn't felt in years. Something told him Azalea Rivers wasn't just another ambitious architect. There was an authenticity to her that cut through the artificial world he inhabited like a fresh breeze through stale air. Little did he know, this rain-soaked encounter would alter not just his future, but the very foundations of everything he'd built. Sometimes, he would later reflect, destiny arrives not with fanfare, but with the simple sound of papers scattering across a marble floor. Chapter 3. Rising Star. The next 3 weeks transformed Sterling Tower's 90th floor into a realm of possibilities. Architectural models dotted the specially cleared conference room like a miniature city, each one bearing Azalea's distinctive vision. The space had become their sanctuary, where innovation danced with ambition and where Xavier found himself spending increasingly long hours, ostensibly reviewing project details. The whispers, of course, began immediately. They slithered through corporate corridors like poisonous snakes, their venom a mixture of racism, ageism, and thinly veiled accusations. "Gold digger," they called her behind closed doors. "Diversity hire," others sneered. "His midlife crisis," the crueler ones suggested. But Azalea Rivers proved to be a force that transcended their petty prejudices. Her first presentation to the board left even the staunchest critics speechless. The sustainable housing project she proposed wasn't just environmentally conscious, it was revolutionary. Solar gardens integrated seamlessly with community spaces, while innovative water recycling systems disguised themselves as artistic fountains. Every detail spoke of a mind that saw beyond the ordinary into realms of extraordinary possibility. The future of urban living isn't about choosing between luxury and sustainability, she declared, her voice confident despite the scrutiny of 12 pairs of skeptical eyes. It's about redefining what luxury means for a conscious generation. Xavier, watching from the head of the table, felt pride surge through him. He'd known from those first scattered drawings in the lobby that she was special, but this was beyond even his expectations. The way she commanded the room, handled pointed questions with grace, and presented solutions before problems could be fully articulated, it was masterful. The project was approved unanimously, a first in Sterling Industries history. As the board members filed out, their whispers now tinged with reluctant admiration, Xavier caught Azalea's eye across the room. The smile they shared felt like a secret victory. Late nights became their ritual. The city lights would paint patterns across architectural plans, while they discussed everything from sustainable materials to childhood dreams. Azalea spoke of growing up in New Orleans, of a father who taught architecture at Tulane, and a mother who painted jazz musicians in the French Quarter. Her heritage had shaped her vision, the blend of French colonial elegance with African artistry, the way old and new could dance together in perfect harmony. "You're different when you talk about buildings," she told him one evening as they stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows. The setting sun painted her skin in shades of gold and amber, making her appear almost ethereal. "It's like you see not just what they are, but what they could mean to people." "You're different when you design them," he countered, allowing himself to admire the way her corkscrew curls caught the fading light. "You see possibilities where others see limitations." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. They both felt it, the gravitational pull that had nothing to do with professional admiration and everything to do with souls recognizing their counterpart. But Xavier kept his distance, haunted by recent wounds and mindful of corporate politics. Yet fate had its own plans. The project demanded site visits, community meetings, and endless planning sessions. Each interaction revealed new facets of Azalea's brilliance. She charmed community leaders with her genuine passion for social impact. She challenged contractors with her technical expertise, and she faced down every prejudiced comment or skeptical glance with a dignity that made her critics look small. "They'll never stop talking," she said one night, after a particularly vicious rumor had circulated through the office. "I'm too young, too black, too female for their comfort, and you're too scandal-ridden," he finished, his tone lighter than he felt. "Too damaged. Too important to be spending so much time with someone like me," she corrected, her amber eyes meeting his with unflinching honesty. "I know what they say, Xavier, that I'm using you, that this is all some calculated move to advance my career." The use of his first name, a rare occurrence that never failed to send a shiver down his spine, made him step closer. "And what do you say to that?" "I say they don't know me." Her voice carried the strength of conviction. "Everything I've achieved, I've earned. Every design, every innovation, it comes from here." She pressed a hand to her heart. "I won't apologize for my passion, my drive, or my vision." It was moments like these that made Xavier realize how deeply he was falling, not just for her beauty, though that was undeniable. Not just for her brilliance, though it dazzled him daily, but for her spirit, unbroken by prejudice, unbowed by pressure, unapologetically authentic in a world of corporate facades. The sustainable housing project progressed rapidly under her leadership. Each milestone achieved was a quiet rebellion against those who had doubted her. The architectural community began to take notice. Articles appeared in design magazines praising the innovative approach to urban sustainability. Azalea's star was rising, and Xavier found himself basking in its glow. But it was the quiet moments that truly tested his resolve. The way she absent-mindedly tucked her hair behind her ear while concentrating. How her face lit up when solving a particularly challenging design problem. The subtle fragrance of her perfume, jasmine and vanilla, that lingered in the conference room long after she'd left. One evening, as rain painted patterns on the windows, reminiscent of their first meeting. Azalea was explaining her latest modification to the community center design. Her passion made her luminous, her hands dancing as she described the interplay of light and shadow. Xavier found himself moving closer, drawn by a force as inevitable as gravity. "It's not just about buildings," she was saying, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. "It's about creating spaces where people can dream bigger dreams, where children can see possibilities beyond their circumstances, where—" She stopped, suddenly aware of their proximity. The air between them hummed with electricity. For a moment, the rest of the world fell away. No scandal, no whispers, no corporate politics. Just two souls recognizing something rare and precious in each other. "Xavier," she whispered, his name a question and an answer, all at once. The city lights sparkled below, witnesses to a moment balanced on the edge of change. In her eyes, he saw not judgment for his past or calculation for his wealth, but something pure and profound, understanding, acceptance, and perhaps something even deeper. The line between professional and personal had never felt thinner or more dangerous. Little did they know their carefully maintained boundaries were about to crumble, swept away by forces stronger than reason or restraint. The rising star was about to collide with the established sun, creating a light that would blind their critics and illuminate their path to an unexpected destiny. But for now, they stood in that charged silence, while the rain painted memories on the windows and the city below held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Chapter 4. Falling Deep. Manhattan glittered like scattered diamonds beneath the Sterling Tower's observation deck, 92 stories above the endless rhythm of city life. The glass-enclosed sanctuary had always been Xavier's private retreat, but tonight it became the stage for a moment that would change everything. Azalea stood at the edge of the deck, her silhouette ethereal against the canvas of city lights. The evening breeze played with her curls, now adorned with subtle golden threads that caught the starlight. Her emerald silk gown, worn for the Sustainable Architecture Awards ceremony they'd just attended, whispered against the glass as she pressed her palm to the window, leaving a perfect print like a signature on the night. "Sometimes," she said softly, her voice carrying in the quiet space, "I stand in my apartment and look up at this building. Even now, after months of working here, it still takes my breath away." Her amber eyes met his reflection in the glass. "Do you ever wonder how many dreams are being born down there right now? How many people are looking up at this very tower, seeing it as a symbol of everything they want to achieve?" Xavier moved to stand beside her, close enough to catch the familiar scent of jasmine and vanilla that had begun to haunt his dreams. The awards ceremony had been a triumph, their sustainable housing project lauded as revolutionary. But watching Azalea accept the award, commanding the room with grace and brilliance, had stirred something profound in him. "I used to come up here every night when I first built this tower," he admitted, his voice carrying a rare vulnerability. "Standing here, everything seemed possible. The city was a canvas, and I thought I could paint it with my vision." He paused, studying their reflections mingled in the glass. "I was so focused on building higher, reaching further, proving something to the world. And now," she turned to face him, the city lights casting patterns across her perfect features. "Now." He met her gaze, letting himself drown in those golden depths. "Now I'm watching someone else's vision transform everything I thought I knew. You see beyond the steel and glass, Azalea. You see the human stories, the community connections, the way architecture can lift spirits and change lives." The air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities. 3 months of working closely together had created a connection that transcended professional boundaries. Every late-night discussion, every shared triumph, every quiet moment of understanding had built to this precipice. "They'll say I'm using you," she whispered, echoing the whispers that still haunted the corporate corridors. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached up to straighten his bow tie, a gesture intimate in its simplicity. "Your board members, the society columns, your ex-wife, they'll say I planned this from the beginning. The ambitious young architect, seducing the wounded CEO." Xavier caught her hand before she could withdraw it, pressing it against his chest where his heart thundered beneath Italian silk. "Let them talk." "Xavier." His name on her lips was both warning and plea. "Your reputation—" "My reputation—" A bitter laugh escaped him. "My reputation was destroyed the moment Adriana decided to turn my personal struggles into public entertainment. But you—" His free hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with infinite tenderness. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" she breathed, leaning almost imperceptibly into his touch. "Hope." The word hung between them like a prayer. Hope that maybe the best parts of life aren't about building towers or accumulating wealth. Maybe they're about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses to stay anyway. A single tear escaped, trailing down her cheek to meet his thumb. "I never meant for this to happen," she confessed. "When I walked into your lobby that rainy day, I was just an architect with big dreams and wet shoes. I never meant to fall." He silenced her with a kiss. The world stopped spinning for one eternal moment. The kiss was gentle at first, a question asked in the language of touch. But when Azalea's arms wound around his neck, fingers threading through his hair, it transformed into something deeper, more primal. Years of loneliness, months of pain, weeks of growing attraction, all of it crystallized in this single point of connection. When they finally parted, breath mingling in the small space between them, the city continued to pulse below, unaware that something monumental had shifted in the glass tower above. "I need you to be sure," Azalea said, her voice husky with emotion, "because I can't do halfway, Xavier. Not with this. Not with you. My heart doesn't know how to love in small measures." His response was to pull her closer, one hand splaying across her back while the other tangled in her curls. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The confession that had been building in his heart for weeks finally spilled out. "You walked into my life when everything was darkness, and you brought light. Not just to my projects or my company, but to me. Every morning, I wake up thinking about your smile. Every night I fall asleep, remembering the sound of your laugh. You've become essential to me, Azalea, as necessary as breathing." She pressed her forehead to his chest, and he felt wetness seep through his shirt. "I'm scared," she admitted, the words muffled against his heart. "Scared of how much I feel for you, scared of what people will say, scared that this is too perfect to be real." Xavier tilted her chin up, making her meet his gaze. In the city lights, her tears sparkled like diamonds. "Then we'll be scared together, but I'm not letting you go. Not now, not ever." "That sounds suspiciously like a promise, Mr. Sterling," she managed through her tears, a hint of her natural playfulness returning. "It is." He brushed away her tears with gentle thumbs. "I promise to stand beside you against every whisper, every doubt, every obstacle. I promise to believe in your dreams as fiercely as you've believed in mine. I promise to love—" This time, she silenced him with a kiss, pouring every unspoken emotion into the connection. When they parted, her smile could have outshone the city below. "I think," she said softly, "that's a promise I'd like to help you keep." The night deepened around them as they remained wrapped in each other's arms, sharing soft kisses and softer words. Below them, The city continued its eternal dance, unaware that in a glass tower high above, two souls had finally found their way home. "Tell me about New Orleans," he murmured against her hair. "Tell me about the little girl who dreamed of building beautiful things." Azalea's laugh was soft, musical. "I used to follow my father around his construction sites, drawing buildings in my little sketchbook. He taught architecture at Tulane, but his real passion was preservation, keeping the soul of the city alive in every renovation, every restoration. And your mother, she painted jazz musicians in the French Quarter, still does. She always said that every building has its own music, its own rhythm. That's why I design the way I do, thinking about how spaces flow, how they make people feel, how they create their own kind of symphony." Xavier smiled, remembering how she described their sustainable housing project in musical terms. The community spaces as movements in a greater composition, each element harmonizing with the others. "They must be remarkable people," he said softly, "to have created someone like you. They taught me that love is the greatest foundation for anything worth building." She traced patterns on his chest, her touch sending shivers through him, even through his shirt. "Whether it's a home, a career, or a life together." The words "life together" hung in the air between them, full of promise. Xavier closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the possibility of it, a future with this extraordinary woman who had walked into his lobby and straight into his heart. "I love you," he whispered, the words falling from his lips as naturally as breathing. "I know it's fast. I know the world will say we're crazy, but I love you, Azalea Rivers, with everything I am." She pulled back just enough to meet his gaze, her amber eyes shining with joy and tears. "I love you too, Xavier Sterling, with all my heart and soul." They stayed on the observation deck until dawn painted the sky in shades of hope, wrapped in each other's arms as their hearts beat in sync. Below them, the city continued its eternal dance, unaware that in a glass tower high above, two souls had finally found their way home. As the first rays of sunlight kissed the horizon, Xavier knew with unshakable certainty that his life would never be the same. The man who had everything, who had lost everything, had found something infinitely more precious than success or status. He had found love in its purest form, unexpected, undeniable, and utterly transformative. Little did they know, this night was just the beginning. Their love story, born in rain and sealed in starlight, was about to take them on a journey neither could have imagined. But for now, they remained suspended in their glass paradise, two hearts beating as one, while the city below awakened to a new day and a new possibility, that sometimes the greatest towers we build are the ones made of love. "Dance with me?" he asked softly as the sun rose, holding out his hand. Without music, they swayed together in the golden light of dawn, creating their own melody with heartbeats and whispered promises. It was a perfect moment, untouched by the world's judgment or society's expectations, just two souls who had found their missing pieces in each other's arms. And as the city awakened beneath them, their love story was just beginning to unfold. Chapter 5. One magical night. The Hamptons estate emerged from the summer twilight like a modernist dream, its clean lines and sweeping glass walls reflecting the first stars of evening. The private beach stretched endlessly before them, waves whispering secrets to the shore as the last rays of sun painted the sky in watercolor hues of lavender and gold. Xavier guided the Bentley down the curved driveway, stealing glances at Azalea in the passenger seat. She wore a dress the color of moonlight, its silk charmeuse flowing like liquid silver around her curves. 3 months of keeping their relationship private in the city had led to this moment, their first real escape together. "You're awfully quiet," he said softly, reaching over to take her hand. Her fingers intertwined with his automatically, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. It's just... She turned to him, amber eyes luminous in the gathering dusk. Everything about this feels like a dream, the kind you're afraid to wake up from. The car came to a stop before the grand entrance, where warm light spilled from tall windows onto the immaculate landscaping. Without waiting for her to reach for the door handle, Xavier was already moving around the car to open it himself. Not out of outdated chivalry, but from a deep-seated need to cherish every moment with her. "If this is a dream," he said, helping her from the car, "then it's one I never want to end." The interior of the house took Azalea's breath away. Soaring ceilings and walls of glass created a seamless connection between inside and out, while carefully chosen art pieces and furnishings spoke of sophisticated taste rather than ostentatious wealth. But it was the flowers that made her gasp. Hundreds of gardenias and jasmine blooms filled crystal vases, their heady scent perfuming the air. "You remembered," she whispered, touching a soft white petal. Early in their friendship, she'd mentioned these were the flowers her father always brought her mother, a tradition started during their courtship in New Orleans. "I remember everything about you." Xavier's voice was rough with emotion as he pulled her into his arms. "Every smile, every laugh, every dream you've shared with me." They stood there in the fragrant twilight, holding each other as the last rays of sun painted patterns across the marble floors. Music began to play softly through hidden speakers, jazz, low and sweet, the kind that filled smoky New Orleans clubs where her parents had fallen in love. "Dance with me." His question was barely a whisper against her hair. They swayed together in the gathering darkness, her head resting against his chest where his heart beat a rhythm that belonged only to her. The slow songs melted one into another, while stars appeared in the darkening sky beyond the windows. "I never thought I'd find this," Azalea confessed, her words soft against the silk of his shirt. "When I walked into Sterling Tower that rainy day, soaked to the bone and chasing scattered papers, I never imagined I was walking toward my destiny." Xavier's arms tightened around her. "You changed everything that day. The moment I saw you, it was like color returned to a world that had been gray for so long." She lifted her head to meet his gaze, and the look they shared held decades of promise. "The board meeting tomorrow can wait," he finished firmly. "Tonight is ours. Just ours." The kiss that followed was gentle at first, a mere brush of lips that quickly deepened into something more primal. Her hands found their way into his hair, while his roamed her back, tracing the silk of her dress and the warmth of her skin beneath. When they parted, both breathing heavily, Azalea took a step back. The look in her eyes made his heart stutter. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for the delicate strap of her dress, letting it fall from one shoulder. "I love you," she said simply, the words carrying the weight of absolute truth. The world seemed to stop spinning for one eternal moment. Then Xavier crossed the space between them in 2 long strides, gathering her into his arms. "I love you," he breathed against her lips, "with everything I am." Their journey to the master suite was a dance of its own, punctuated by kisses and whispered endearments. Moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the room into a palace of silver light and shadow. Their lovemaking was everything first times should be, tender yet passionate, unhurried yet urgent, a perfect blend of hearts and bodies finding their natural rhythm. Every touch wrote promises on skin, every kiss sealed vows in their souls. They explored each other with reverence and desire, creating a symphony of sighs and whispered names that rivaled any classical masterpiece. Later, as they lay tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, Azalea traced patterns on Xavier's chest while he played with her curls, now wild from their lovemaking. The sound of waves provided a gentle backdrop to their contentment. "Tell me a secret," she murmured, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. He was quiet for a long moment, his hand still stroking her hair. "I used to think I was cursed," he finally admitted. "After everything with Adriana, the publicity, the whispers, I thought maybe the universe had decided I didn't deserve this kind of happiness." Azalea propped herself up on an elbow, her expression serious in the moonlight. "You deserve every happiness, Xavier Sterling, and I plan to spend however long you'll have me proving that to you." "Forever," he said immediately. "I want forever with you." The smile that bloomed across her face outshone the stars visible through the windows. Forever it is, then. Neither could have known in that perfect moment that their love had already created something miraculous, that this night of passion and tenderness would result in not one, but 3 precious gifts, that the universe, far from cursing Xavier, had been preparing him for a blessing beyond imagination. They made love again as midnight approached, this time with a desperate edge of need that left them both trembling. Afterward, they stood together on the private balcony, wrapped in sheets and each other's arms, watching waves crash against the moonlit shore. "Whatever comes next," Azalea said softly, "we face it together." Xavier pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Together," he agreed. "Always." The night enveloped them in its velvet embrace, stars wheeling overhead while the ocean sang its eternal song. In this magical place, on this enchanted night, 2 hearts had truly become one. Dawn found them still awake, unwilling to let their perfect night end. They watched the sun rise over the Atlantic, its first rays blessing their love with golden light. In the garden below, early birds began their morning songs, and the ocean breeze carried the promise of new beginnings. "I should get you back to the city," Xavier said reluctantly as full daylight approached. "The board meeting?" Azalea silenced him with a kiss. 5 more minutes, she whispered against his lips. He smiled, pulling her closer. 5 more minutes, he agreed. The world could wait. Their careers, their responsibilities, the inevitable challenges they would face, all of it could wait. For now, they remained suspended in their perfect moment, 2 hearts beating as one, while the sun climbed higher and the waves kept their eternal rhythm. Little did they know, their greatest adventure was just beginning. The magic of this night would multiply 3-fold, creating a miracle that would shake the foundations of their world and silence their critics forever. But that revelation was still weeks away. For now, they had this moment, this love, this perfect beginning. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The breeze carried the scent of gardenias and salt air, mixing with the lingering perfume of jasmine on Azalea's skin. Xavier breathed it in deeply, committing every detail to memory. The way the morning light played across her face, how her curls caught the golden rays, the perfect fit of her body against his. "I love you," he said again, because some things bear infinite repetition. Her smile was radiant as the rising sun. "I love you too, always." The day beckoned with its demands and responsibilities, but they remained in their private paradise for those precious extra minutes, letting love wrap around them like a protective cocoon. The world could wait. Their forever was just beginning. Chapter 6. Unexpected Blessing. 6 weeks after their magical night in the Hamptons, Azalea stood in her private bathroom at Stirling Tower, staring at 3 pregnancy tests lined up on the marble counter. Her hands trembled as she checked her watch again. 3 minutes had never felt so eternal. The executive bathroom, usually a place of quick touch-ups between meetings, had become a sanctuary of possibility. The first signs had been subtle, the way her favorite coffee suddenly turned her stomach. How the scent of blueprinting paper, normally comforting, made her dizzy, the inexplicable exhaustion that crept in during afternoon meetings. She'd attributed it all to stress, to the increasing pressure of their sustainable housing project's final phase. But this morning, when she'd nearly fainted during the construction site visit, Xavier's concerned eyes had mirrored her own growing suspicion. He'd insisted on having his private physician examine her, but she'd needed to know first, needed this moment alone with what could be the most life-changing discovery of their relationship. 2 minutes left. Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman transformed by love, her skin glowing, her amber eyes bright with hope and fear in equal measure. The designer suit she wore couldn't hide the slight tremor in her hands as she smoothed them over her still flat stomach. "Please," she whispered to her reflection, to the universe, to whatever higher power might be listening. "Please." The timer on her phone chimed softly. With heart thundering, Azalea forced herself to look down at the tests. 3 perfect plus signs stared back at her. Positive. All 3 of them. Undeniably positive. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the counter for support as tears blurred her vision. The impossible had happened. The man everyone had labeled infertile, whose inability to have children had been splashed across society pages and whispered about in boardrooms, had created life with her. A knock at the door made her jump. Azalea. Xavier's voice carried equal parts concern and love. "The doctor is here. Are you all right?" She opened the door with shaking hands, tears still streaming down her face. The moment he saw her expression, he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Sweetheart." His voice was tender, uncertain. Wordlessly, she gestured to the counter. Xavier's sharp intake of breath was followed by absolute stillness as he stared at the 3 positive tests. "Are they—" His voice cracked. "Are they all—" "Positive," she whispered. "All 3 of them." The change that came over his face was extraordinary. Joy, wonder, and fierce love transformed his features as he gathered her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in an embrace that spoke of dreams finally realized. "A baby," he breathed against her hair. "Our baby." A soft knock interrupted their moment. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, Xavier's trusted physician, entered with quiet professionalism. The next hour passed in a blur of blood draws, examinations, and questions, but it was the ultrasound that changed everything. "Well," Dr. Chen said, studying the screen with practiced eyes, "this explains the elevated hormone levels." She turned the monitor so they could see better. "Congratulations, you're carrying triplets." The world seemed to stop spinning. Azalea's grip on Xavier's hand tightened as they stared at the screen, at 3 distinct heartbeats, flickering like stars in the darkness. 3? Xavier's voice was barely a whisper. 3 healthy embryos, approximately 6 weeks along. Dr. Chen's smile was warm. "Given your history, Mr. Sterling, this is quite remarkable. I'd like to schedule weekly monitoring, and we'll need to begin planning for a high-risk pregnancy management strategy." But neither Xavier nor Azalea was really listening anymore. Their eyes remained fixed on the screen, on the miracle multiplied by 3 that they had created together. When they were finally alone again, Xavier pulled Azalea into his arms, his hand splaying protectively over her stomach. "3 babies," he said in wonder. "We made 3 perfect babies." "Are you scared?" she asked softly, searching his face. His laugh was thick with emotion. "Terrified, overjoyed, grateful." He pressed his forehead to hers. "But mostly, I'm in awe of you, of us, of this miracle we've created together." The afternoon sun streamed through the office windows, painting them in golden light as they held each other, both lost in dreams of the future. 3 cribs, 3 first steps, 3 sets of tiny hands reaching for them. "The board meeting is in an hour," Azalea remembered suddenly. "They're expecting the final presentation on the community center designs." Xavier's hand remained on her stomach, his thumb stroking gentle circles. "Cancel it. Cancel everything. Today we celebrate. Xavier Sterling, cancelling a board meeting. She tried to sound teasing, but her voice cracked with emotion. The world really has turned upside down. No, he corrected softly, pulling her closer. It's finally turned right side up. He led her to the window, where the city spread out before them like a promise. Look out there, he said, standing behind her with his arms wrapped around her waist. Everything I've built, every tower and project and achievement, none of it means anything compared to what we've created together. Azalea leaned back against him, their joined hands resting over the place where their 3 miracles grew. What do we tell people? The truth, he said simply, that love creates miracles, that sometimes the universe has plans bigger than our own. His lips brushed her temple. That Adriana's lies are finally exposed for what they were. She'll be furious, Azalea murmured. Let her be. Nothing can touch us now. His voice held absolute certainty. You and these babies are my future. Everything else is just noise. They stood there together, watching the city buzz with life below while their own private miracle grew within. 3 hearts beating beneath their joined hands, 3 souls already loved beyond measure. I love you, Azalea whispered, turning in his arms to face him. All 4 of you. Xavier's kiss was tender, reverent, a promise sealed with love. And we love you, all 4 of us. The news would break soon enough. The whispers would start again, but this time they would hold no power. For in this moment, in this sun-drenched office high above Manhattan, a family was being born, not just of blood and bone, but of dreams finally realized and love multiplied 3-fold. Later that evening, as they lay tangled together in Xavier's penthouse, planning nursery colors and debating names, the future stretched before them like an endless horizon of possibilities. The miracle they had created would not just change their lives, but would reshape their world in ways they could not yet imagine. 3 perfect heartbeats, 3 precious gifts, 1 extraordinary love story that would silence every doubt and heal every wound. The impossible had become possible, and their greatest adventure was just beginning. As night fell over the city, Xavier held Azalea close, his hand never straying far from where their miracles grew. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, medical appointments to schedule, announcements to plan, a future to prepare for. But tonight was for dreaming, for loving, for marveling at how one magical night had transformed into 3 perfect blessings. Thank you, he whispered into the darkness. For what? Azalea asked sleepily. For making me believe in miracles again. Her answer was a soft kiss and a whispered always as they drifted to sleep, wrapped in love and the promise of their extraordinary future together. Chapter 7. Society's Judgment. The headline blazed across the New York Times business section. Sterling Industries, CEO expecting triplets with young project lead. Beneath it, a photo of Xavier and Azalea leaving their most recent doctor's appointment, his hand protectively cradling her slightly visible bump, her face glowing with unmistakable pregnancy radiance. The news had broken, exactly as they'd planned. A simple, dignified press release followed by a joint interview with a respected business journal. But the response had been anything but simple. Manhattan's elite social circles erupted like a volcano of speculation, judgment, and thinly veiled racism. A calculated move, whispered the ladies who lunched at Le Bernardin. She trapped him, muttered board members behind closed doors. What will this do to shareholder confidence? Wondered financial analysts on morning shows. Azalea stood at the window of their penthouse office, one hand absently stroking her growing belly where their 3 miracles flourished. At 12 weeks, the morning sickness had finally subsided. replaced by an energy that helped her face each new challenge with grace. "They're saying I orchestrated this," she said quietly, not turning as Xavier entered the office. "That I researched your condition and timed everything perfectly." His arms slid around her from behind, his hands covering hers over their babies. "They're saying I'm having a midlife crisis and you're my exotic adventure." His tone held bitter amusement. "Apparently I'm too old and you're too young, too ambitious and too black," she finished, finally turning to face him. "You can say it. Everyone else is." The pain in her eyes made his heart clench. He'd known there would be backlash, but the viciousness of it had surprised even him. Anonymous comments on business articles had turned ugly, forcing them to disable the feature entirely. Society matrons who'd once fawned over Azalea's architectural brilliance now whispered behind their hands at charity events. "None of it matters," he said firmly, cupping her face in his hands. "The only truth that matters is in here." He pressed a gentle kiss to her belly, where their triplets grew stronger each day. The intercom buzzed, Violet warning them that Adriana was in the building, demanding to see Xavier. They'd been expecting this confrontation since the news broke. "Let her up," Xavier said calmly. "It's time to face this." Azalea straightened her designer maternity dress, a Valentino piece that draped perfectly over her growing bump. "Together? Always." Adriana burst into the office like a storm cloud in Chanel, her perfectly maintained facade cracking with fury. "How dare you," she spat, "making me look like a liar, letting the whole world think I deceived them." "You did deceive them," Xavier replied coolly, his hand never leaving Azalea's back. "You took my private medical information and twisted it for your own gain." "Private medical—" Adriana laughed bitterly. "You were the one who couldn't perform, who made me waste years of my life waiting for a baby that would never come. The doctors always said it was unlikely, not impossible," Azalea interjected calmly. "And they also said stress and psychological pressure could make it more difficult. Perhaps if you'd supported him instead of berating him." "Oh, how perfect," Adriana sneered. "The young mistress, so understanding, so supportive. Tell me, did you plan this? Calculate the perfect moment to seduce him when his guard was down?" "That's enough." Xavier's voice cut through the tension like steel. "You can attack me all you want, Adriana, but you will not speak to the mother of my children that way." "Children?" She spat the word like poison. "Triplets. How convenient. Making up for lost time, Xavier, or just making absolutely sure everyone believes your little miracle." "Get out." His tone was deadly quiet. "You lost the right to comment on my life when you chose to humiliate me publicly. These babies are a blessing I never thought I'd have, with a woman who loves me for who I am, not what I can give her." "The board will never accept this," Adriana warned, gathering her wounded dignity. "A pregnant project lead? Mixed-race babies? The old money families will pull their investments? Let them." Azalea's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Sterling Industries' stock has risen 15% since our announcement. Your lies are crumbling, Adriana. Our babies are proof of that." As if in response to their mother's strength, one of the babies kicked. Azalea gasped softly, grabbing Xavier's hand to feel the movement. The look of pure joy that transformed his face was answer enough to every doubt, every whisper, every cruel comment. Adriana watched the intimate moment with a mix of fury and something that might have been regret. Without another word, she turned and left, her Louboutins clicking a sharp retreat on the marble floors. "Are you all right?" Xavier asked softly, once they were alone. Azalea smiled, guiding his hand to where another baby was now kicking. "We're perfect. All four of us." The afternoon sun painted patterns across the office floor as they stood there, hands joined over their growing miracles. Outside, the city buzzed with gossip and speculation. But in here, their love created a sanctuary nothing could breach. "I have something to show you," Xavier said after a moment. He led her to his desk, pulling out a small velvet box. "Xavier, this isn't a proposal. That's coming later, with all the romance you deserve." He opened the box to reveal 3 tiny golden bands on delicate chains. "These are promise rings, one for each of our babies, a symbol that no matter what anyone says, they were created in love and will be born into love." Tears spilled down Azalea's cheeks as she touched the delicate rings. "They're beautiful, like their mother," he whispered, pulling her close, "like our future together." That evening, as they lay in bed reviewing the latest ultrasound photos, Azalea traced the strong profiles of their babies, 2 boys and a girl, all perfectly healthy. "What they're saying, it doesn't bother you?" she asked softly. "The comments about your age, about me being a gold digger?" Xavier propped himself up on an elbow, his free hand caressing her bump. "The only voices I care about are in this room right now. You, me, and these 3 perfect miracles we created together." A swift kick beneath his palm emphasized his words, making them both laugh. "See? They agree." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Let them talk, my love. We know our truth." Outside their window, Manhattan glittered like a sea of stars, while inside, their love created a universe of its own. 3 hearts beat beneath their joined hands, 3 souls already loved beyond measure. The whispers would continue, the judgment would persist, but they had something stronger. A love that had already created miracles, and the promise of a future filled with more wonder than any of their critics could imagine. As night fell over the city, Xavier held Azalea close, their babies safe between them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new whispers to face, but tonight was for them, for love, for the family they were building together. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Chapter 8. Standing Strong. The Temple of Dendur, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, had never looked more enchanting. Ancient Egyptian limestone, transported stone by stone and rebuilt with painstaking care, created a backdrop of timeless elegance for the annual gala. The soaring glass ceiling revealed a canvas of stars above, while strategic lighting cast golden shadows that danced across the centuries-old hieroglyphics, merging past and present in a shimmer of possibility. At 5 months pregnant with triplets, Azalea Rivers commanded attention in a way that transcended mere fashion. Her custom-designed Valentino gown celebrated rather than concealed her growing bump, the deep burgundy silk flowing like wine around her curves, intricate golden embroidery, inspired by Egyptian motifs in honor of the venue, caught the light with every movement, making her appear to glow from within. Her natural curls had been styled into an elegant updo, with tendrils framing her face in a way that somehow managed to look both regal and effortlessly beautiful. Xavier couldn't take his eyes off her. From his position across the room, where he was supposedly engaged in conversation with the mayor about urban development, he watched her move through the crowd with the grace of a queen. Her hand rested protectively over their babies as she discussed sustainable architecture with New York's most influential developers. The whispers that had once been cruel had transformed into murmurs of admiration. Not that either of them cared anymore. "Your sustainable housing project has revolutionized affordable living," the mayor was saying, clearly impressed. He gestured with his champagne flute toward the holographic display, showcasing the project's latest phase. "The solar integration alone has caught the attention of urban planners worldwide. The real revolution is in the community spaces," Azalea replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had become her trademark. She joined their conversation with perfect timing, sliding her hand into Xavier's with practiced ease. "When people feel connected to their environment and each other, real change happens. Xavier watched with pride as she commanded the conversation, turning skeptics into believers with her passionate intelligence. She pulled up project statistics on her tablet, the soft glow illuminating her features as she explained, "The latest survey shows a 90% satisfaction rate among residents. But more importantly, we're seeing unprecedented community engagement. The rooftop gardens are fully subscribed, the educational programs are overflowing, and we're already receiving inquiries about expanding the model to other cities." The mayor's wife, a formidable philanthropist in her own right, touched Azalea's arm gently. "And you've managed all this while expecting triplets? That's extraordinary." "The babies give me extra motivation," Azalea smiled, her free hand caressing her bump with natural tenderness. "These projects aren't just about buildings anymore. They're about the world we want our children to inherit. Every sustainable feature, every community space, every design choice is made with future generations in mind." As if on cue, one of the babies kicked strongly enough for those nearby to see the movement through the silk. Instead of trying to hide it, Azalea laughed with genuine joy. "That would be our little girl," she said fondly. "She's already making her opinions known. Her brothers are usually more subdued." The moment transformed the atmosphere, replacing any lingering awkwardness with authentic warmth. Here was a woman in full possession of both her professional power and her feminine grace, refusing to apologize for either. The sight of her pregnancy, once fodder for cruel gossip, had become a symbol of triumph, living proof that women could have it all on their own terms. Later, as they moved through the elegant crowd, Xavier kept his hand at the small of her back, not possessive, but supportive. They developed an elegant choreography over the months, each anticipating the other's needs without words. When she needed to sit, he'd guide her seamlessly to the nearest chair. When she craved water instead of the sparkling cider in her glass, he'd have it replaced before she could ask. "Your ex-wife is by the Egyptian sarcophagus," Azalea murmured, having spotted Adriana's distinctive platinum hair. "She's with the Thompson Group investors." "Let her watch," Xavier replied calmly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "She can't touch what we have." Indeed, Adriana's attempts to undermine them had backfired spectacularly. Each public appearance of the clearly besotted couple, each new success of their sustainable housing project, had only reinforced the truth that love, not bitterness, created real power. The sight of Xavier Sterling, once considered Manhattan's most eligible bachelor, doting on his pregnant partner with unabashed devotion, had transformed public opinion more effectively than any PR campaign. The evening's crescendo came during the donor recognition ceremony. As chair of the museum's sustainability initiative, Xavier was called to speak, but instead of delivering the expected speech about green building practices, he deviated from the script, his voice carrying easily through the ancient space. "Looking around this ancient temple," he began, gesturing to the limestone walls that had witnessed millennia of human stories, "I'm struck by how it survived thousands of years because its builders understood something fundamental. That true strength comes from alignment with natural laws." His eyes found Azalea's in the crowd as he continued, "We live in a time of unprecedented change, yet some truths remain eternal. Love creates, love builds, love transforms. 6 months ago, many of you in this room thought you knew my story. You'd read the headlines, heard the whispers, perhaps even participated in spreading them. A hushed tension fell over the crowd. Even Adriana, standing rigid by the sarcophagus, couldn't look away. But life has a way of revealing deeper truths. Today, I stand before you not just as a businessman, but as a man transformed by love. My brilliant partner, Azalea Rivers, hasn't just revolutionized how we think about sustainable architecture. She's shown me what real strength looks like." Tears glistened in Azalea's eyes as he continued, his voice rich with emotion. "Watching her face every challenge with grace, seeing her command boardrooms while carrying our 3 miraculous babies, I'm humbled and inspired every day. She proves that true power isn't about domination, it's about creation, about building something meaningful that will outlast us." The silence in the room was absolute, every eye moving between Xavier at the podium and Azalea in the crowd, their connection almost visible in the charged air. The ancient temple seemed to hold its breath, adding its own weight of history to the moment. So, yes, let's talk about sustainability. But let's remember that what we're really building isn't just structures, it's futures, communities, legacies of love that will echo through generations, just like this ancient temple has carried its builder's vision through millennia. He paused, his next words carrying the weight of personal truth. Every stone in this temple was placed with purpose, just as every moment of our lives leads us where we're meant to be. Some of you once questioned my capability to create a legacy. Tonight, I stand before you blessed beyond measure, with a woman who shows me daily what real strength looks like, with 3 miracle babies who prove that love conquers all doubts, and with a vision of the future that extends far beyond profit margins and stock prices. Tears flowed freely now, not just from guests, but from hardened business executives and society matrons who had never shown such emotion publicly. The ancient temple, which had witnessed thousands of years of human drama, seemed to embrace this modern story of love and redemption. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing off the limestone walls like a symphony of validation. But Xavier had eyes only for Azalea as he made his way back to her side. She met him halfway, uncaring of the hundreds of watching eyes as she melted into his embrace. "That wasn't the approved speech," she whispered against his chest, her voice thick with emotion. "Some things are more important than approved speeches," he replied, his hand finding its natural place over their babies. 3 distinct kicks greeted his touch, making them both laugh softly. Even their unborn children seemed to be participating in this moment of triumph. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and well-wishes, but they remained in their own world, connected by love and the 3 precious lives they'd created together. Even Adriana's departure, early and obviously shaken, barely registered in their consciousness. As their car wound through the city streets later that night, Azalea nestled against Xavier's shoulder, her hand intertwined with his over their babies. "You know, tomorrow's papers will be full of analysis about your speech." "Let them analyze," he said softly, his thumb stroking gentle circles on her silk-covered bump. "Some things are beyond analysis, like how much I love you, like these 3 miracles we've made together, like how you've transformed not just my life, but the lives of everyone our work touches. Like how you've made me strong enough to face anything," she added, twining her fingers with his. The city lights painted patterns through the car windows as they headed home, but the real light came from within, from the love that had created miracles, silenced critics, and built something more precious than any tower or temple. Their babies kicked in synchronized joy, as if agreeing with their parents' thoughts. Here was real strength, real success, real power, not in the glittering gala they'd left behind, but in the family they were building together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new victories to achieve. But tonight, in the quiet of their car, they had everything that mattered. Love, each other, and the 3 precious lives that prove dreams really do come true. The ancient temple had witnessed their triumph, but their greatest victories were still to come. In the quiet moments of family life, in the communities they would build, and in the legacy of love they would leave for generations to follow. They had stood strong against every challenge, and together they would continue to build a future more beautiful than either of them had ever imagined. Chapter 9. Miracle Times 3. The private wing of Mount Sinai Hospital hummed with anticipation on a warm spring evening. Outside, cherry blossoms painted Central Park in shades of pink and white, their petals dancing on the breeze like nature's own celebration of new life. Inside, in a luxuriously appointed birthing suite that overlooked the park's verdant expanse, a different kind of miracle was about to unfold. At 35 weeks, the sterling triplets had decided it was time to make their grand entrance into the world. The suite itself was a testament to both wealth and taste, not ostentatious, but designed for comfort and calm. Soft music played through hidden speakers, the gentle notes of jazz mingling with the steady rhythm of 3 distinct heartbeats on the fetal monitors. Fresh flowers, carefully selected to be hypoallergenic, filled crystal vases, their subtle fragrance helping to create an atmosphere more spa-like than medical. Azalea lay in the state-of-the-art birthing bed, her hand gripping Xavier's as another contraction rippled through her body. She'd been in labor for 18 hours, refusing an immediate C-section in favor of trying for a natural birth as long as the babies remained stable. Dr. Chen had supported her decision, monitoring each precious heartbeat with unwavering attention. "You're doing amazingly, my love," Xavier whispered, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth infused with lavender essence. He hadn't left her side once, matching each breath with her through every contraction, his own heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and awe. Gone was the powerful CEO in his designer suits. Here was simply a man on the verge of fatherhood, his vulnerability beautiful in its rawness. "Tell me again," she said between carefully measured breaths, her voice steady despite the intensity of her labor, about their nursery. It had become their ritual during these long hours, him describing the perfect room they'd created for their miracles, helping her focus on something beyond the pain. The nursery had been a labor of love, designed by Azalea herself in rare moments of rest during her pregnancy. "The walls are the color of dawn," he began, his deep voice soothing as he massaged her lower back with practiced movements. "That perfect blend of gold and rose that you loved, catching the light differently throughout the day. The cribs are arranged like a constellation, each unique but forming a perfect triangle, crafted from sustainable wood and draped with organic linens in shades of cream and gold." Another contraction interrupted him, stronger than before. Azalea breathed through it with remarkable grace, her strength evident in every controlled movement. Dr. Chen appeared instantly, her calm presence reassuring as she checked monitors and positions. "Your babies are working in perfect harmony," the doctor observed with quiet amazement, each one moving into position exactly as they should. "They're already showing remarkable synchronization." Xavier continued his description, giving Azalea something to focus on. "The mobile you designed catches the light just right, creating patterns that dance across the ceiling. Sacred geometry in motion, just like you envisioned. The window seat is deep enough for all of us to curl up together for story time, with views over Central Park that will change with the seasons." "The rocking chair," Azalea prompted between breaths, smiling despite her exhaustion. "Tell me about the rocking chair." "Hand-carved by artisans in New Orleans," he continued, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Your father supervised every detail, making sure it matched the one your mother used to rock you in. The cushions are covered in that impossibly soft organic fabric you found, the color of moonlight on water." A particularly strong contraction gripped her, and Dr. Chen's expression became focused. "It's time," she announced, her calm professionalism reassuring. "These babies are ready to meet their parents." What followed was a symphony of organized chaos, yet somehow maintaining an atmosphere of sacred anticipation. The delivery team moved with practiced precision, while Azalea's strength amazed everyone in the room. Xavier held her hand, his heart thundering with love and awe as their first miracle emerged. "Baby A is here," Dr. Chen announced triumphantly. "A beautiful boy." The cry that filled the room was strong and clear, a perfect note of new life that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Nurses whisked him to the warming station for quick checks, while his siblings prepared to follow. "Atlas," Azalea breathed. The name they'd chosen months ago, suddenly perfect as their firstborn's strong cry, echoed through the room. "Our strong one." Minutes that felt like eternities passed before their daughter arrived, her cry more musical than her brother's. A sound that seemed to contain all the jazz notes of her mother's New Orleans heritage. "Phoenix," Xavier whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he caught a glimpse of her perfect features. Rising into life with song. The final push brought their second son into the world. "Sage," they said together, as his cry joined his siblings in a perfect chorus. His eyes, when they opened briefly, held an old soul's wisdom. 3 babies, 3 cries, 3 miracles that defied every odd and silenced every doubt. The room filled with joyful tears as the delivery team, hardened professionals all, witnessed something extraordinary, not just the birth of triplets, but the culmination of a love story that had captured the city's imagination. The next hour passed in a blur of first checks, cleaning, and finally holding their precious bundles. Azalea reclined in the bed, now dressed in a soft silk robe in her signature cream color. Phoenix cradled in her arms, while Xavier sat beside her holding Atlas and Sage. They couldn't stop staring at the perfect little faces, each unique, yet carrying traces of both parents in exquisite combination. Atlas, the firstborn, had Xavier's strong features softened by Azalea's golden undertones. His grip was already strong as he held his father's finger, eyes blinking in the soft light, as if trying to memorize every detail of his new world. Born first, yet still protecting his siblings, he had positioned himself slightly ahead of them, even in the womb, as if clearing the way. Phoenix, their daughter, was a perfect blend of both parents, with her mother's amber eyes and her father's determined chin. Her cries had settled into soft coos that indeed sounded musical, as if she was already trying to sing along with the gentle jazz still playing in the background. Her tiny fingers splayed like a pianist's, reaching for the world with artistic grace. Sage, the youngest by mere minutes, had his mother's delicate features and his father's intense gaze. He seemed to study everything around him with an old soul's wisdom, his movements deliberate and calm. Even the nurses had remarked on his unusual alertness, the way his eyes tracked voices and movements. "They're perfect," Azalea whispered, her voice thick with emotion as she traced each tiny face with gentle fingers. "Absolutely perfect." Xavier carefully shifted closer, creating a circle of love around their 3 miracles. "Like their mother," he said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Thank you for this gift, for making me a father, for believing in miracles when everyone else doubted." The babies seemed to sense the profound moment, all 3 settling into peaceful contentment in their parents' arms. Outside, the sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in colors that matched the nursery walls, waiting at home. Cherry blossom petals drifted past the window, nature's confetti celebrating new life. "I can't believe they're finally here," Azalea marveled, touching each tiny face with gentle fingers. All those months of feeling them grow, wondering what they'd look like, who they'd become. "They're more beautiful than we could have imagined," Xavier agreed, his empire of steel and glass suddenly insignificant compared to these 3 precious lives they'd created together. "And they're already showing their personalities." A nurse entered quietly with papers to record the official names. Atlas Sterling, £6, 2 ounces, born at 7:42 p.m. First to arrive, already protective, Phoenix sterling, £5, 8 ounces, born at 7:47 p.m. A voice like music, reaching for the stars, sage sterling, £5, 11 ounces, born at 7:52 p.m. Wise eyes watching the world unfold, all healthy, all perfect, all miracles. As night fell over the city, the new family of 5 remained in their private cocoon of joy. The world would want pictures, statements, announcements, but all of that could wait. This moment was theirs alone, sacred in its perfection. Xavier watched his children and their mother doze peacefully, his heart so full it felt near bursting. These 4 souls were his true legacy, not the buildings he'd raised or the fortune he'd amassed, but this family created in love and defying all odds. "I love you," he whispered to all 4 of them, "more than all the stars in the sky." As if in response, Phoenix gave a tiny sigh in her sleep, while Atlas and Sage snuggled closer in perfect synchronization. Their family was complete, their love multiplied 3-fold in one magical night. Outside the window, a shooting star streaked across the Manhattan sky, nature's own celebration of 3 miracles born to parents who had never stopped believing in the power of love. Chapter 10. New Beginnings. The sterling penthouse had transformed from a showcase of modern luxury into something far more precious, a sanctuary of new life and boundless love. Dawn painted the nursery in soft gold, filtering through custom-designed smart glass that adjusted to maintain perfect lighting for the sleeping triplets. At 3 months old, Atlas, Phoenix, and Sage had settled into a rhythm as unique as their personalities. Azalea stood in the doorway, wrapped in a silk robe, watching their 3 miracles sleep. Atlas, ever the protective firstborn, had somehow managed to position himself slightly ahead of his siblings even in his crib. Phoenix's tiny hands reached out in her sleep, as if conducting an orchestra in her dreams. Sage, their thoughtful youngest, slept peacefully with an expression of complete serenity. "They're still asleep?" Xavier's whisper came from behind her as his arms wrapped around her waist. He still wore his suit from the late-night board meeting, but his tie was loosened, a concession to the more relaxed father he'd become. "All 3, she confirmed softly, leaning back against him. Though Phoenix was humming in her sleep again, "I swear she's already trying to talk." The change in Xavier over the past 3 months had amazed everyone who knew him. The ruthless CEO had transformed into a devoted father who thought nothing of conducting multi-million-dollar negotiations with a baby, or 2 or 3, in his arms. His office now featured a state-of-the-art nursery adjacent to the main space, allowing him to keep the triplets close while working. "The Sustainable Housing Project evaluation came in," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It's being hailed as a global model for community-centered development. They want you to present at the United Nations Development Conference next month." Azalea turned in his arms, her eyes bright with excitement. "Really? But the babies will be right there with us," he finished firmly. "All 3 of them. The world needs to see that motherhood and professional excellence aren't mutually exclusive." A soft whimper from Sage's crib drew them both instantly. Before it could escalate and wake his siblings, Azalea scooped him up with practiced grace. His dark eyes, so like his father's, blinked up at them as his whimpers subsided into contented coos. "There's my thoughtful boy," she whispered, swaying gently. "Did you just want to check on Mama and Daddy?" Xavier's hand came to rest on their son's back, and Sage immediately reached for his father's finger with surprising strength. These moments, quiet, perfect, filled with love, made every challenge worthwhile. They moved to the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the awakening city. The space had evolved like they had, maintaining its elegance while adapting to life with 3 babies. Custom-designed playmats in muted gold and cream tones lay ready for tummy time. A hand-carved rocking chair, a gift from Azalea's parents in New Orleans, occupied pride of place by the windows. "The Times wants to do a feature," Xavier said softly as they settled into the chair together, Sage still contentedly gripping his finger, "about how Sterling Industries' focus on family-friendly policies has influenced corporate culture across the city." Since the triplets' birth, Xavier had revolutionized his company's approach to working parents. The sustainable housing project now included state-of-the-art childcare facilities. Parental leave policies had been expanded to include fathers and adoptive parents. Flexible working arrangements had become the norm rather than the exception. "You're changing things," Azalea observed, watching their son's eyes drift closed again. "Not just buildings anymore, but minds." "We're changing things," he corrected gently. "Your strength showed me what was possible, carrying our 3 miracles while revolutionizing sustainable architecture. You made it impossible for anyone to argue that parenthood and professional excellence couldn't coexist." A soft duet of cries from the nursery announced that Atlas and Phoenix had awakened. Xavier immediately rose to get them, returning moments later with a baby expertly cradled in each arm. The sight still made Azalea's heart skip, this powerful man so gentle with their tiny children. "Good morning, my loves," she cooed as he settled beside her on the oversized chair they'd chosen specifically for family moments like this. Atlas immediately began his morning conversation, a series of animated coos and gurgles that never failed to make them smile. Phoenix, true to form, offered what sounded suspiciously like a musical response. "They're getting stronger every day," Xavier observed, watching Atlas attempt to roll over while Phoenix reached determinedly for a dangling curl of her mother's hair. "Dr. Chen says they're developing ahead of schedule." "They're Sterlings," Azalea laughed softly. "Overachieving is in their DNA." The morning sun climbed higher, painting their family tableau in warm light. House staff moved quietly in the background, preparing for the day ahead, but this moment belonged to just the 5 of them. "I have a surprise for you," Xavier said after a while, when all 3 babies had been fed and were contentedly exploring their playmats. He retrieved a large envelope from his briefcase, handling it with obvious excitement. "What's this?" Azalea asked, accepting it curiously. "Open it." Inside were architectural plans, familiar ones but with significant modifications. Her eyes widened as she recognized her original designs for the sustainable housing project, expanded to include something new. "The Sterling Rivers Foundation for Sustainable Communities," she read, her voice catching. "Xavier." "A legacy for our children," he explained, his eyes soft as he watched Phoenix attempt to crawl toward her brothers. "A way to ensure that the changes we're making outlast us. The foundation will focus on developing sustainable, family-friendly communities worldwide, with a special emphasis on supporting working parents." Tears spilled down Azalea's cheeks as she studied the plans. The Foundation's headquarters would be a masterpiece of sustainable architecture, incorporating every innovation they'd pioneered together. But more than that, it represented a future where their professional dreams and personal joy were perfectly intertwined. "It's perfect," she whispered, looking up at the man who had given her everything: love, family, and the chance to change the world. "Like you," he replied, gathering her close while being careful not to disturb the babies. "Like our family." The triplets chose that moment to demonstrate their growing personalities. Atlas managed his first full role, Phoenix began her morning song, and Sage observed it all with his characteristic, thoughtful expression. Their parents laughed in delight, the sound mingling with baby giggles to create a perfect symphony of joy. Outside, Manhattan bustled with its usual energy, but inside their sanctuary, A different kind of power held sway. The quiet strength of family bonds, the profound miracle of new life, and the endless possibility of dreams built on love. They had created something extraordinary together. Not just three perfect babies, but a new vision of what success could look like. Their love story had transformed from scandal to inspiration, proving that the most powerful force in any universe was the human heart's capacity for love. As morning light filled their home with golden promise, Xavier and Azalea Sterling watched their miracles grow stronger, their dreams expand wider, and their love deepen with each precious moment together. Chapter 11. Truth and Reconciliation. The Good Morning America interview was supposed to be about Sterling Industries' revolutionary family-friendly workplace policies. Instead, it became the stage for an unexpected act of public redemption. Adriana Blackwood had requested to appear alongside Xavier and Azalea, a request that had initially been met with skepticism but ultimately accepted with grace. The morning show's studio buzzed with tension as makeup artists made final touches. Azalea sat beside Xavier, radiant in a cream Stella McCartney suit that complemented her postpartum glow. At home, their 3-month-old miracles were being lovingly cared for by Azalea's parents, who had flown in from New Orleans specifically for this moment. "Are you sure about this?" Azalea whispered, noting how Adriana stood alone in the corner, her usual confidence notably dimmed. "We don't need her validation anymore." Xavier squeezed her hand, his wedding ring, newly placed there in an intimate ceremony the previous weekend, catching the studio lights. "Everyone deserves a chance at redemption," he replied softly. "Even her." The segment began with a feature on the Sterling Rivers Foundation's latest initiatives, showing footage of their sustainable communities and the families whose lives had been transformed. The camera captured tender moments of Xavier and Azalea with the triplets in their office nursery, demonstrating how workplace culture could adapt to support working parents. Then came the moment that would change everything. "Joining us today," the host began, "are Sterling Industries CEO Xavier Sterling, his wife Azalea Sterling Rivers, and in an unexpected appearance, Mr. Sterling's former wife, Adriana Blackwood. Ms. Blackwood, you specifically requested to be here today. Why?" Adriana's hands trembled slightly as she faced the camera. Gone was the polished society wife who had once wielded rumors like weapons. In her place sat a woman humbled by truth. "I came to set the record straight," she began, her voice carrying the weight of long-held guilt. 3 years ago, I made allegations about Xavier's fertility that were not just false, but deliberately manipulated to cause harm." The studio fell silent. Azalea felt Xavier's hand tighten around hers. "The truth is," Adriana continued, "our fertility struggles were complex and mutual. The doctors never said it was impossible, just challenging, but I was impatient, angry, and instead of supporting my husband through our difficulties, I chose to blame him publicly." She turned to face Xavier and Azalea directly. "Watching you both with your beautiful triplets, seeing how you've transformed not just your company, but the very definition of family-friendly business, I realized it was time to admit my wrongs." "What made you decide to come forward now?" the host asked gently. "Last week I visited one of the Sterling Rivers Foundation's community centers," Adriana replied, emotion cracking her voice. "I saw single mothers being supported to pursue their careers while raising their children. I saw fathers actively involved in childcare without judgment. I saw the world I could have helped create if I'd chosen love over bitterness." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Instead of destroying Xavier's reputation, my lies became the catalyst for something extraordinary. He found true love with Azalea, created 3 miracle babies, and together they're building communities that will help families for generations." The cameras caught Azalea's instinctive movement forward. her hand reaching out to touch Adriana's arm in a gesture of unexpected comfort. It was a moment of profound feminine solidarity that transcended past hurts. "The truth is," Adriana finished, looking directly at her former husband, "you weren't the one who couldn't create life, Xavier. I was the one who couldn't create love. And I'm deeply sorry for the pain I caused." Xavier's response demonstrated the leadership that had made him legendary in business. "Thank you, Adriana," he said quietly, "but this moment isn't about past hurts. It's about future healing. The Sterling Rivers Foundation would welcome your expertise in developing programs for families dealing with fertility challenges." The surprise on Adriana's face was genuine. "You would trust me with that?" "Sometimes," Azalea interjected gently, "the people who have faced the greatest struggles are best equipped to help others through similar paths." The rest of the interview focused on the Foundation's future plans, but the real story had already unfolded, one of truth, redemption, and the healing power of love. Later that evening, as they drove home to their babies, Azalea studied her husband's profile in the fading light. "That was incredibly generous of you," she said softly, offering her a role in the Foundation. "It feels right," he replied, his eyes soft as he turned to her. "Our happiness is too complete to hold on to old hurts, and maybe her experience can help other couples navigate their fertility journeys with more support and less judgment." When they arrived home, the sight that greeted them washed away any lingering heaviness from the day. Their babies lay on a plush playmat, surrounded by Azalea's parents' love. Atlas was attempting to roll over yet again, his determination unmistakable. Phoenix was serenading everyone with her proto-words, while Sage observed the world with his characteristic thoughtful expression. "There's my angels," Azalea cooed, gathering Phoenix into her arms, while Xavier scooped up the boys. The babies' happy gurgles filled the room with pure joy. "You know," Azalea's mother observed wisely, "sometimes the greatest acts of love are the ones that heal old wounds." Xavier looked around at his family, his beautiful wife, their miracle babies, the supportive in-laws who had embraced him without reservation, and felt profound gratitude. Every challenge, every painful moment had led to this perfection. Later that night, after the babies were sleeping peacefully in their nursery, Xavier and Azalea stood at their favorite window, watching the city lights twinkle like earthbound stars. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "how different things might have been if Adriana hadn't made those accusations?" "Never," he replied firmly, pulling her close. "Every step of that journey led me to you, to our babies, to this perfect life we've built together." As if in agreement, a chorus of soft coos emanated from the nursery monitor. Their miracles, even in sleep, seemed to be affirming the rightness of their parents' path. The truth had finally been spoken, old wounds had begun to heal, and their love story had transformed from scandal to inspiration. But the real miracle wasn't in the public vindication, it was in the quiet moments like these, wrapped in each other's arms, while their babies slept nearby, their hearts beating in perfect synchronization with the rhythm of their shared dreams. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to change the world through their Foundation's work. But tonight was for cherishing the peace that comes with truth, the joy that flows from forgiveness, and the endless love that had turned past pain into present perfect. Chapter 12. Celebration of Love. The grand ballroom of the Sterling glowed like a dream realized. Thousands of white orchids and jasmine blooms cascaded from crystal chandeliers, their perfume mingling with the soft notes of a string quartet. Manhattan's elite gathered for what appeared to be a simple christening celebration. But those who knew better understood this was something more profound, a moment of destiny fulfilled. 3-month-old Atlas, Phoenix, and Sage Sterling lay in their mother's arms, dressed in christening gowns hand-sewn from Azalea's wedding dress. The babies, already showing their distinct personalities, captivated everyone who saw them. Atlas, strong and protective even now, kept reaching for his siblings. Phoenix's musical coos harmonized with the quartet, while Sage observed everything with his father's thoughtful gaze. Azalea was radiant in a custom Valentino gown, the color of moonlight, her natural beauty enhanced by motherhood and joy. But it was Xavier who commanded attention as he stepped to the podium, his eyes glistening with emotion as he surveyed the gathered crowd. The room fell silent, sensing the weight of the moment. Among the guests were those who had once whispered cruel words, spread vicious rumors, questioned his manhood. But there were also those who had supported them, believed in their love, celebrated their miracles. Former critics and steadfast supporters alike waited for his words. 5 years ago, Xavier began, his voice rich with emotion. I stood in this very room and received an award for building the tallest tower in Manhattan. I thought then that I had achieved everything a man could dream of. He paused, his eyes finding Azalea and their babies. I had never been more wrong. Tears already began to glisten in the eyes of many guests as he continued. To those of you who once believed lies about me, who spread rumors, who questioned my worth as a man, I don't stand here seeking revenge. I stand here offering forgiveness. Because every cruel word, every painful moment led me to a rainy day when an extraordinary woman chased scattered papers across my lobby. His voice cracked slightly as he looked at his wife. Azalea, my love, you didn't just change my life. You showed me what life could be. When the world was darkest, you brought light. When others saw weakness, you saw potential. When I had lost faith in miracles, you gave me 3 perfect ones. The babies cooed in perfect synchronization, drawing tearful laughs from the crowd. Look at them, Xavier continued, gesturing to his family. These 3 precious souls who doctors said couldn't exist. Our son Atlas, already showing the strength of his namesake, protecting his siblings before he can even crawl. Our daughter Phoenix, whose voice already carries the music of her mother's soul. And our youngest, Sage, watching the world with wisdom beyond his months. He turned back to the crowd, his voice gaining strength. Some of you called me less than a man. Some questioned my ability to create a legacy. But true legacy isn't in the towers we build or the fortunes we amass. It's in the lives we touch, the love we share, and the miracles we create together. Tears flowed freely now, not just from guests, but from hardened business executives and society matrons who had never shown such emotion publicly. To my children, his voice softened with infinite tenderness, I promise you a world where love knows no boundaries, where dreams have no limits, and where miracles are born from faith and perseverance. You were created in a love so powerful it defied medical odds and social prejudices. You are living proof that when hate tries to destroy, love builds instead. Azalea was openly crying now, her tears matching those of nearly every guest in the room. To those who doubted, I forgive you. To those who supported us, we thank you. And to anyone who has ever felt judged, limited, or told their dreams were impossible, look at my family. Look at these 3 miracles. Look at the woman who dared to love a broken man and made him whole again. His voice filled with passionate conviction. This isn't just a christening. This is a celebration of love's power to transform, heal, and create miracles. These babies aren't just our children. They're proof that love conquers all obstacles, that faith moves mountains, and that the greatest towers we can build are the ones made of love and hope. The room was utterly silent, except for quiet sobs, as Xavier walked to his family. Taking baby Sage in his arms, he continued, Today, we name our children before God and our community. But they were named by love long before this moment. Atlas, our strength; Phoenix, our song; Sage, our wisdom. 3 heartbeats that prove dreams come true. 3 souls that show love's infinite power. 3 miracles that remind us all, never stop believing. He gathered his family close, his next words barely audible through his own tears. To anyone who ever called me broken, I thank you, because sometimes we need to be broken completely to be rebuilt into something greater. And I was rebuilt by love, restored by faith, and blessed beyond measure by these 3 precious gifts. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as Xavier pressed a gentle kiss to each baby's forehead, then one to his wife's lips. The string quartet, themselves moved to tears, began to play softly as the afternoon light streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the family tableau. The celebration continued long into the evening, but that speech became legendary in Manhattan society. Years later, people would still speak of the day Xavier Sterling brought New York's elite to tears, of how love had transformed scandal into salvation, and how 3 miracle babies proved that sometimes the greatest power lies not in wealth or status, but in the infinite capacity of the heart to create miracles. As night fell over the city, Xavier and Azalea stood on their penthouse terrace, their sleeping babies cradled close, watching the lights twinkle below. Their love story had become more than personal triumph. It had become a beacon of hope, a testament to love's power to heal, transform, and create miracles beyond imagination. "I love you," Azalea whispered, "all 4 of you, more than all the stars in the sky." "And we love you," Xavier replied softly, "more than every grain of sand on every beach, more than every raindrop in every storm, more than every dream in every heart." The city stretched endlessly below them, but their greatest infinity was right here, in the miracle of family, in the power of love, and in the perfect truth that sometimes life's greatest towers are built not of steel and glass, but of faith, forgiveness, and the boundless power of love. Subscribe if you liked.